Sometimes your best investments are the ones you don't make. Donald Trump. All right. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Okay. Looks like the military industrial complex is at it again. We're going to take a look at that. Um, Here's what Elon Musk tweeted was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. So let's take a look at this because wowee. All right. So in response to an account posting the US State Department's recent memo, he said that means they're eligible for drone strikes. Now, wait, what? Who? Who are we talking about drone striking? And, I thought we were trying to be anti-war. I thought we were like getting out of wars, right? Isn't that what? So the account says breaking US State Department under President Trump has officially designated the following as foreign terrorist organizations. And then it goes on to list like I don't know that I'll say this correctly, but Tren de Araga, MS-13, and a whole bunch of cartels and other organizations. All right. So that's what Elon Musk was responding to. He was like, look, we can drone strike MS-13. Like that's his answer. Like, oh, okay. I again, I thought we were out of that business, or we were trying to get out of that business. But, maybe not. All right, so let's watch this video. We're going to get a little bit more info from Reuters here. They had a nice little video that we can use. So here, let's check that out. Let me see here. Boom.
Tren de Aragua, the Sinaloa cartel, and other drug cartels were designated by the United States as global terrorist organizations on Wednesday. That's according to a Federal Register notice issued by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It said the groups pose a risk to U.S. national security, foreign policy, and economic interests. After he took office, President Donald Trump had issued an executive order to evaluate whether any criminal cartels or transnational gangs should be designated as terrorism groups. Designating a group as a foreign terrorist organization is aimed at disrupting its finances through sanctions. That can include freezing assets and travel bans. However, Andres Sumano, a security expert at El Colegio de la Frontera Norte in Mexico, told Reuters the move has him concerned about the U.S. undermining Mexican sovereignty.
Por ejemplo, de los Marines, ¿no? De los Estados Unidos que vengan.
Eventually, we may see operations by the US Marines, for example, to capture a kingpin, do drone attacks, or attack a laboratory. We have to see if this is possible.
That's interesting. Pause that right here. He said we might see US drone strikes hitting a laboratory. I mean, that has happened in the past, right? We internationally with terrorist groups, the United States has been like, look, we just bombed somebody's wedding. I mean, it's it's a wedding sometimes or something along that line. But they're like, well, we were attacking some terrorists. We were taking out a terrorist camp, whatever. That's what we've done. So at this point, we can't really say, okay, they're just exaggerating. It's hyperbole. They're making it up. No, we've actually done this in the past already, right? And these are, as we're going to get into here in a moment, these are formal declarations. This isn't just Trump necessarily running his mouth. Like, he says things all the time. He'll say, oh, maybe we should look at this. Maybe we should do that. These are bad dudes. These are bad hombres. Some of them are good. He says all kind of crazy things. And so what we have to do is we have to separate, okay, what are the crazy things that he says? Maybe he's just kind of baiting his haters to get wild and crazy and, say all kind of crazy stuff so he can go and do his things. But then there are also official actions. Well, this is all an official action. So we're going to dive into this more, but I just want to point out that so far nothing in here in this speculation is unreasonable because it's already been done.
¿Qué tan posible es esto? Técnicamente tiene muchas.
Technically, I think the designation has many deficiencies, and it's still not clear what exactly they want to use the designation of criminal groups as terrorist organizations for.
Criminales como organizaciones terroristas.
The scope of the designation announced on Wednesday was not immediately clear. Some analysts have said the terrorism designations could expose asylum seekers who pay cartels to be smuggled to the possibility of prosecution or being barred from the US.
So now there's an interesting theory on how this may play out. We're going to look at maybe the worst case scenario, but maybe this is just a way to deal with immigration, which is a bizarre way to do it. So I want you to think, in the past, we've talked about what asylum seekers are, right? In past episodes, I've talked about this and said, look, asylum seekers are people that are like, look, I've got a situation here that I'm trying to escape. And then they try to come to the US. They're not familiar with our laws. So they take the easy route and they say, well, I want to seek asylum. The US might look at it and say, okay, well, for the reasons that you're presenting, you cannot seek asylum here. And the big problem with our asylum process is that people will come in, they'll say that I want to seek asylum. The United States will give them a court date, maybe many months or maybe even, years in the future. And then they'll say, go ahead and just live among the American people and then come back and we'll review your case. And then a lot of times they just simply don't come back because for whatever reason, maybe they were bad people and they were just using that as an excuse. Maybe they didn't see any reason to come back like, hey, I've been living in the United States, seems to be going fine. What do I need to finish? What do I need to keep going, through this process for? There could be any number of reasons, good, bad, and somewhere in between. So that's the asylum process. And maybe this is a really bizarre way to kind of clamp down on that. Because if you've been following the news, the last I knew, Trump said he wanted to institute the Remain in Mexico Act, which would basically say, instead of letting you loose in America, we'll keep you in this camp over in Mexico. And Mexico said, the first time they were willing to go along with it. But then recently they were like, nah, we're not doing that. Well, you can't force them to have a camp in their country. So what do? You try to find some other way to deal with this immigration, and I'm going to put it in quotations, problem, right? So that may be what's going on. However, there are unintended consequences that we will look at here in a moment.
A State Department spokesperson declined to comment on the notice, saying the agency was notifying key stakeholders before the designations take effect.
Okay. So that was, I guess I could have just let that one play all the way through. So that's Reuters, very boringly giving us a little bit of detail, but we're going to go into some more detail. But first, before we do that, I want to kind of look and see what was the response to Elon Musk. Now, I know, guys, you're like, DL, why is it always about Twitter and X? Well, that's where I am, and that's where I see a lot of activity. And so when I see a lot of activity or something that's what I think of as important, then I talk about it because that's what the public square, if you will, is talking about. Or there's just a lot of content to work with, and it's a really nice place. So I use it. Okay, let me rephrase that. It's a really nice place to find a lot of content. Twitter is not necessarily X is not necessarily a really nice place. It can be pretty rough sometimes. All right, so let's take a look. Let's see. Maybe the comments were good. Maybe they were bad. I don't know. Let's see. Let's take a look and see what we get from these comments. So here, first up was from our very own Chase Oliver from the Libertarian Party. He said justifying drone bombs in the war on drugs is some next level bad crap. And I'm sure all the quote anti-war voters who supported Trump are ready to call this out any minute now. Waiting. Still waiting. Just kidding. I added that part. He didn't say that. But same point. Ian Carroll. Bro, don't even start trying to justify drone strikes within U.S. borders. No. Nope. So much no. Let's see. Mises Caucus official account. Terrible move. Combining the drug and terror wars in our southern neighbor, will be horrendous. Libertarian Mama, this is not good. It is not. Let's see. 10th Amendment Center. Only if you like the Barack Obama version of the Constitution, which has nothing to do with the Constitution of the founders. Totally agree. Profit Minute Guy, former treasurer of the LNC. How much money would we save if Doge convinced Trump to stop all drone strikes? I'm going to show you some money numbers later. You might be surprised. And that's going to go into why this is such a bad idea. Steady says, horrible idea. Bombing Mexico will have unintended consequences. Boy, oh, won't it? The Americas are a land of peace and prosperity. Since when? I get what they're trying to say. There's like what it's supposed to be, the ideal version in our mind, and then there's the reality. All right, what else? David Fight says, so you and everyone else that campaigned on anti-war and no more drone strikes will call this out and oppose it, right? I mean, they're already not opposing it because he's like suggesting it. Well, I don't know. If you think about that tweet, he just said it'll make him eligible for drone strike. It doesn't actually, in fairness to Elon Musk, it's not very clear in that one tweet or post where he was going. Like, was he supporting it or was he like just pointing out like, hey, I don't know if y'all noticed this, but maybe that's where he was going. Jonathan Pratt, MS-13 originated in Los Angeles, California. So are you saying there will be drone strikes on U.S. soil? I just want to throw out that maybe there have been. Philly, just saying. Look it up. All right. Let's see. Faison Ram says he didn't include Los Zetas, which means they're allied with the CIA. Actually, it did. I just didn't mention it in the post that Elon was retweeting or reposting, but it was in there actually. That doesn't mean they're not aligned with the CIA. It just means that Los Zetas was in there. Karen Ann Harless, aren't you glad this is the quote most libertarian administration in our lifetimes? Facepalm. Hey, Karen Ann, just want to throw this out there. We're in 2025. You're allowed to use emoji facepalms. Just saying, throwing that out there. Little fun-loving jab. Come on, guys. All right, Matt Johnson says, Jesus, some of these cartels are already inside the U.S. Calling for drone strikes is blood-soaked insanity. Like the phrasing, and yes, it is. So it doesn't seem like people were responding. And these were just like some of like when I went there, these are some of the top ones that I saw. Now, probably because of the way that the algorithm works, because I'm mutuals with most of those people, those rose to the top for me to see. But if you scroll through, you'll see that a lot of other people are objecting, and sprinkled in there are people who kind of are like, yeah, well, this is probably a good idea. We need to, we need to continue on and fight that drug war because gosh darn it, we're almost there. We're on the precipice of winning. We're not, but they probably believe that. So it doesn't seem like this idea has a lot of a lot of the people that were supporting Trump don't appear to be supporting this idea. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe what this means is that the Trump administration will be like, okay, we're going to do this thing, but we're not going to use the drone strikes. Maybe that's how it'll work out. It's yet to be seen. Because I mean, the truth is, Trump didn't say we're about to be drone striking you guys. Elon just at least pointed out the implication, and whether or not he supports it is a little unclear. But these are the unintended consequences of legislation, right? And unintended consequences tend to begat, if you will, unintended consequences. So you pass legislation. Well, what does that legislation allow you to do? What allows you to do this thing? Okay, well, if you do that thing, what happens then? Well, this might happen. And then if this happens, then it's a chain reaction. So we always have to be vigilant about this stuff. All right, so let's take a look. Let's take a look really quickly at Trump's executive order, and then we're going to take a little bit of a breakdown from Grok. I've been enjoying Grok breaking things down. In fact, let me tell you just a side story here. The other night, my son was working on his homework, and he was doing some reading lessons, and it was like, here's a word, and here are 3 words. Which word is a synonym? Now, I could readily identify which word is a synonym. There were a few for which I was like, I think you're stretching it there, but okay. Well, some of the words he wasn't as familiar with, or he couldn't really define necessarily. It was one of those situations where it's like he could probably use it in a sentence when he needed to, but if you ask him to define the word, he's a little unclear about it. So I went to Grok and I said, define this word for a 5-year-old. And it did a really good job. It was like, okay, so imagine you have some cars and this and this and this and this, and it broke it down. And so then I just read it to him, and then he was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then he would look at the other words and he would pick the right word. So it was really cool. So like you can use AI to even assist with homework with your kids. Because like it's not a question of whether or not I understood the words or whether or not I could define them necessarily. It was just a matter of like, can I define them in a way that a 6-year-old can understand? That was really and I wanted to make sure that I didn't, because this is not something I do I kind of do on a regular basis, but I don't exactly break things down on the regular for children. I do it to help my son occasionally when he needs help. Otherwise, it's not really something I do. So AI has some wonderful features, and I've been using it more and more and more to assist. So I really encourage you to get on board the AI train. Make sure when you're asking AI questions that you say like, please and thank you, just in case we have a future where, they got to start picking and choosing. Maybe maybe AI has its own military industrial complex. I'm just saying. So a please and thank you might go a long way. All right. Let's take a look at his this executive order here, and we're gonna read right on through it here. Let's see. Let's put this up on the screen. Do 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 do. Let's see here. Where is it? Why is it not on the screen here? You being uncooperative. It is being uncooperative. Give me just a second here while I get my bearings back in order. There we go. I think that's gonna be it. All right, there we go. Okay, here we are. All right. Designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorist. So this came out on January 20th, 2025. By the authority vested in me as president by the United States. I'm reading. What am I reading? By the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the Immigration and Nationality Act. the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, we will come back to that in just a moment, it is hereby ordered. This order creates a process by which certain international cartels and other organizations will be designated as foreign terrorist organizations or specially designated global terrorists. Yeah, as amended. Okay. I'm skipping some of the things in parentheses and some of the references to the statute and all that. I'm just trying to read example. All right. International cartels constitute a national security threat beyond that posed by traditional organized crime, with activities encompassing convergence between themselves and a range of extra hemispheric actors, from designated foreign terror organizations to antagonistic foreign governments. This really, really sounds serious. Complex adaptive systems, characteristics of entities engaged in insurgency and asymmetric warfare, and infiltration into foreign governments across the Western. Wait a minute. Is he talking about the CIA or is he talking about cartels? Because I'm not sure I can tell the difference here. Just saying. Just saying. Like this convergence between themselves in a range of extra hemispheric actors, from designated foreign terror organizations to antagonistic foreign governments. Complex adaptive systems, characteristics of entities engaged in insurgency and asymmetric warfare, and infiltration into foreign governments. This is literally this sounds exactly like the CIA, and which you are listening probably, and you earned it. So deal with it. You don't want to have this reputation, be better. The cartels have engaged in a campaign of violence and terror throughout the Western Hemisphere that has not only destabilized countries with significant importance for our national interest, but also flooded the United States with deadly drugs, violent criminals, and vicious gangs. Okay, so there's kind of like our tie-in to immigration, because we've been complaining about this, right? I mean, we just saw what was it, a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, something like that. We saw that there was like an apartment complex that was taken over by the Venezuelan gang. I can never pronounce their name, but you remember their name. Like they like there was a video, like somebody's Ring camera caught these guys walking up with what looked like AK-47s, just rolling up somebody's apartment, like bam, 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 open up the door. We own this place now. Like that's crazy, right? And that's absolutely insane. All right, so continuing on. The cartels functionally control, through a campaign of assassination, terror, rape, and brute force, nearly all illegal traffic across the southern border of the United States. In certain portions of Mexico, they function as quasi-governmental entities, controlling nearly all aspects of society. The cartels threaten the safety of the American people, the security of the United States, and the stability of the international order in the Western Hemisphere. Their activities, proximity to, and incursions into the physical territory of the United States pose an unacceptable national security risk to the United States. What have I said, folks, in the past? I've told you that the government, our government, United States government, they love to use two things as the basis for like half of their actions. Not half literally, but quite a few. That is, that's number one, what they said here, national security, and the other one is interstate commerce. Like if you were to take away those two things and say you are no longer allowed to use these as the justification for your actions, like the United States government would be crippled. They'd be like, what do we do? How do we do anything? Right? Because they can't seem to do anything without invoking one of those two. Other transnational organizations, such as Araga, I think it's Araga, TDA, we'll go with TDA, La Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13. So you can tell how well I did in Spanish class in high school. They pose similar threats to the United States. Their campaigns of violence and terror in the United States and internationally are extraordinarily violent, vicious, and similarly threaten the stability of the international order in the Western Hemisphere. Now, I will agree, they are extraordinarily violent and vicious. That is not like, of the things that you could argue against, that would not be one of them. They absolutely are. You might remember I did an episode a while back where I interviewed a Venezuelan. I was thinking like he's from somewhere else. No, I interviewed a Venezuelan asylee, a friend of mine, And I know a couple people, and one of the people that I know, they mentioned that this gang is so bad that the only thing that we should be considering is killing them. That's what they said. They were like, "Look, that's your option. You kill them, or they're just going to continue being atrociously violent and bad. Like as I say, extraordinarily violent and vicious, right? Like that's your option. That's according to them. Okay. So and that's somebody that lived there that may even have crossed paths with them at one point. The cartels and other transnational organizations such as TDA and MS-13 operate both within and outside the United States. They present an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. I hereby declare a national emergency under IEEPA to deal with those threats. Policy. It is the policy of the United States to ensure the total elimination of these organizations' presence in the United States and their ability to threaten the territory, safety, and security of the United States through their extraterritorial command and control structures. So, this executive order wants to completely eliminate their presence in the United States. Now, mind you, these organizations have been around in the United States for a very long time. They have many members. And now we're like, oh, we're going to totally eliminate you. Right. Uh, Within 14 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of State shall take all appropriate action in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence to make a recommendation regarding the designation of any cartel or other organization described in Section 1 of this order as a foreign terrorist organization or specially designated global terrorist. So, in other words, Secretary of the Treasury, Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence, they all are required to be in on this and determine, okay, how are we designating these people, right? How are we designating these groups? That's important because what this is telling you is that Donald Trump, our president, is taking this to what I would say is an insane level. It's an insane level. We're involving all of these agencies for what is effectively the drug war. Now, the drug war has expanded. You've got human smuggling and things along that line, but primarily it is a drug war. That is what built it up in the first place. So let's see. I think that's we don't have to read everything else. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into what is it. So let's take a look. Let's look at the breakdown of this executive order a little bit. So let's see. Let's go over to let's see. And no, let's do this. I know what I wanted to do. So let's do this and is it working? You cooperating here? I think that's what I want. Yes, I believe that's what I want. All right. So here we are. I asked Grok, I said, what is the impact of this executive order? And then I gave it a link. So I wanted to see, like, what do you have to say about it? I'm not going to read it all because it's lengthy. Sometimes Grok can be a little bit, I think Grok can be a libertarian sometimes. It's very, very verbose. But anyway, let's look at just the conclusion. The I could post a link to this in the show notes, and you can go read it for yourself. The executive order could significantly escalate the U.S. fight against cartels by treating them as terrorist entities, unlocking powerful legal, financial, and operational tools. It may disrupt drug flows, enhance border security, and pressure foreign governments, but it also risks straining international alliances, particularly with Mexico, and raising domestic civil liberties concerns. The real-world impact hinges on a follow-through, whether designations are made and how broadly they're applied, and if they translate into tangible outcomes beyond existing efforts. As of February 20th, it is a bold framework with the potential still unfolding. So it's not exactly clear what could happen, right? But for instance, like under domestic policy here, it says the designation could shift drug-related crimes from a criminal justice issue to a national security priority. This might increase funding for anti-cartel initiatives, expand surveillance and detention powers, potentially affecting civil liberties, influence public perception, framing cartels as existential threats akin to terrorist groups rather than profit-driven criminals. And we're going to talk about the profit here in just a few moments. But first, what I want to do is I want to take a moment. We're going to look at some comments, and then we're going to go to intermission. I'm going to come back. We're going to dive in just a little bit more because there's more. There's a whole lot more. There's way more than I could cover, excuse me, in a single episode. But we're going to do that. So let's go to our comments here and let's see what we got. Excuse me. Goodness. All right, let's see. Let's see what our comments are saying. What are folks saying in the comments? Let's see. Okay, it looks like I'm looking at the comments, folks. So just bear with me here. It looks like most everybody is having a conversation among themselves, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. I'm just looking for anything that I may want to address. Here's a good comment. I like this. So Oddsman says, since the Bonzo administration, I've called it the tax and spend drug war. That's what it is. The tax and spend drug war. And mind you, just point out, the drug war has been a massive failure. It has been going on since like the 70s. Okay, we're in 2025, and we are no closer to having eliminated the drug war, winning the drug war, or really making a dent in the drug war. Like it's just not happening. It's like it's getting worse. Let's see. I think that is all for the comments. So let's go to intermission real quick, and then we'll come back. We'll dive into some more stuff, and we'll see what we can uncover about the possibility of what this means. All right. Hey, Liberty fam, do me a favor. If you enjoy the show, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. By the way, if you want to support the show, head over to libertydad.locals.com and sign up. For $5, you can be part of this show. There, I'll engage supporters of the show. We'll discuss topics that you want me to talk about, response videos that you would like to see, or anything related to the show. And I'll even have a monthly subscribers only episode. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. That's my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. If you're a dad or you know a dad who has something to say, let's get connected. Episodes air live on Friday mornings or Friday evenings, whichever works best for dads. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so nice little quick intermission there. So let's dive in. So first things first, let's go ahead and take a look, and hopefully I didn't mess everything up. Let's take a look really quickly at, so here's how this works. The executive order basically declares an emergency and then says, here's what I want you to do. And so then he tells all his people, he tells his cabinet, he goes, you figure out the designation for these people. And so then what Elon Musk quoted it originally was the report that came back, right? So you have the executive order, which says, do this thing, come back to me, give me an answer. I'm declaring an emergency. Here's why it's an emergency. We've got to do something, national security, blah, blah, blah. And then they come back and they say, okay, here's what we've determined. So here is that. It's from the Federal Register. Okay, so this is foreign terrorist organization designations of, and then it lists a whole bunch of them. So we're going to take a quick look at this, and then we will see what we come up with. So let's see here. We want to go here, and oops, hold on, one more thing. Let's change this to there. There we go. Perfect. All right, there we are. So this is the Federal Register. So this is basically the same thing that that Musk was tweeting or quoting. So clicking the right windows here. So it says, based upon a review of the administrative records assembled in this matter and in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Treasury, I have concluded that there is a sufficient factual basis to find that the relevant circumstances described in Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, as amended, exist with respect to, and then it lists all of these organizations and groups. Okay. Therefore, I hereby designate the aforementioned organizations and their respective aliases as foreign terrorist organizations pursuant to Section 219 of the INA. This determination shall be published in the Federal Register. So again, we are beyond just simply Trump throwing things out there to stir up the media. We're beyond that. We are making formal declarations. This is the groundwork for activity that the government can engage in. They're going through the process. The question here is, what does this mean exactly? So, and this is Marco Rubio. He signed it. He's the Secretary of State. So let's take a look, because I asked Grok, because remember, there were two things. There were two things that were being asked. Determine whether or not they're a foreign terrorist organization or a specially designated global terrorist. So Trump asked in his executive order, and then it turns out that they've determined, hey, you know what? Looks like we're going to determine that they're foreign terrorist organizations. Okay, so let's look at that distinction, because I asked Grok, well, what's the distinction on this? And this is what it gave me. So let's go back to that. All right, so here we are. So it tells me that the difference between a foreign terrorist organization and a specially designated global terrorist lies in their legal definitions, designation process, and implications under U.S. law. Both terms are used by the United States to combat terrorism. So right off the bat, we are shifting from drug war to kind of like terrorist drug war. All right, let's see. Where both terms are used, but they serve distinct purposes and are administered by different government entities. Here's a breakdown. Foreign terrorist organization is designated by the U.S. Department of State under Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. That must meet three criteria. Number one, it's a foreign organization. Number two, it must engage in terrorist activity, attacks, bombings, or other acts intended to harm civilians or governments, or retain the capability and intent to do so. You got to love it when government kind of adds that little extra there, like, or they can do it. Maybe they're not doing it, but they can. Its terrorist activity must threaten the security of U.S. nationals or the national security of the United States. Now, who gets to decide that? Government, of course. All right. Consequences. Members or representatives of an FTO are barred from entering the United States. Providing material support, funding, weapons, or training to an FTO is a federal crime under U.S. law. Now, if you come here, if you illegally come to the United States and you cross the border, it's not a federal crime. Okay? But if you come to the United States and you're assisted by an organization that's designated as an FTO, then you could be like, they could broadly say that you are providing material support. Because if they say, well, we'll help you across the border, but you got to give us $1,000, and you give them $1,000, that's funding. So now anybody that came through that can be tied to one of these organizations. Now, mind you, some of these people might just be like, look, I would like to come to the US and make a better life for myself. And there's no option for me to do this. So I'm going to ask the MS-13, as much as I hate them, to help me get through to the United States. It's not an unreasonable situation, because there aren't any good entities that are sitting at the border like, yeah, we'll help you out for a little bit of money and we're totally legit. They don't exist. They're all going to be illegal like this. And because there's money involved, and because like the way that these organizations operate, they're going to be dominant, and they're going to be the ones that are good. Like, it's not like you've got MS-13 or, Jose, who's just a nice guy. He's not official. He's still doing it illegally, but he's a nice guy. That's not how it works. MS-13, they're going to be like, no, no, no. Jose, you either work for us or you don't work, right? So that's how the border is going to be dominated. Purpose. Primarily focused on immigration enforcement, criminal prosecution, and disrupting terrorist networks, operations, and funding. Examples: Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hezbollah. Wow. It's like we didn't learn any lessons from decades of fighting the war on terror. We didn't learn. We were just like, yeah, we couldn't get the Middle East. So you know what? Let's try Central America. I bet we could totally get all these failed ideas to work there. Designation process involves a formal review by the State Department, consultation, blah, blah, blah. All right, now compare that to specially designated global terrorist. That is an individual, group, or entity designated by the U.S. Department of the Treasury's Office or of Foreign Assets Control. This designation targets a broader range of actors involved in terrorism, including terrorist organizations, foreign or otherwise, individuals, leaders, financiers, operatives, entities, front companies, or charities that support terrorism. And the consequences are that it would block assets of the designated entity or individual in the United States or held by a U.S. person. So this one could actually consume U.S. individuals as well. It prohibits U.S. persons from engaging in any transactions with the SDGT, aims to economically isolate and dismantle terrorist networks by cutting off their financial lifelines. Now, what we should be asking as Americans for both of these entities, where are the examples of them working? I mean, if we go back and we look at the FTO, their examples here from Grok are Al Qaeda, ISIS, and Hezbollah, which haven't really worked. Yet that's what we designated all these cartels and organizations and gangs. Okay. Key differences. FTO is limited to foreign or organizations engaged in terrorism. SDGT can include individuals, organizations, or entities. And then it's just a matter of which agency is administering it. The FTO is by the Department of State, hence Marco Rubio. The SDGT is Department of the Treasury, presumably because it includes U.S. citizens, like U.S. citizens are within that scope. Legal focus. FTO emphasizes immigration restrictions and criminal penalties for material support. So presumably, this is really all about immigration, all of it. Now I'm gonna pick on some of my fellow libertarians because I just showed a whole bunch of posts, and some of them were from libertarians. Now I'm not gonna point at any particular one, but I'm just gonna say that a lot of those people that were saying, "Hey, this is not a good idea," were also people that supported Donald Trump on the basis of dealing with immigration. The unintended consequences of your vote has put us right here. So a long time ago, some people got mad at me because I was pointing out and I was saying, hey, some of these bad things that are going to come or potentially come from the Trump administration, you own that. And man, did I get a lot of trouble. A lot of people are like, whoa, whoa, whoa. No. It's like they wanted to say, well, I only voted for the good stuff, not the bad stuff. Well, that's not how it works. The way that it works is that you have willingly accepted that some of this bad stuff may come and you didn't know what it was. And in this particular instance, some of those bad things are dealing with immigration, which is explicitly what you voted for. You voted to deal with the immigration issue. Well, he is. And you now don't like it. Own it. That's all I'm going to say. It's like, you got to own it. So let's talk about some of the implications here. Because I think that's important for us to go through. But before I do that, let me touch upon one thing. So I asked about the IEEPA, right? The International Emergency Economic Powers Act, because that effectively is what Donald Trump is using to create this executive order to go through this entire process. He's invoking that. So what is it? So let me put that back up on the screen so that we can take a look at that, because I think this is actually quite important. So here we go. All right. And I just said, explain the IEEPA and what power it grants as if I were a high school student. All right, let's break this down super simply, like I'm explaining it to you over lunch in the cafeteria. So hopefully you guys got your chocolate milk. I have my juice. The IEEPA stands for the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. It's a law in the United States that was passed in 1977. It's kind of like a superpower the president gets to use when there's a big problem, like a national emergency that involves other countries or serious threats to the United States. Imagine the president is the captain of a ship, the U.S., and the IEEPA is a special tool in their toolbox. Normally, the captain has to follow a bunch of rules about how to steer the ship, rules made by Congress. But if something crazy happens, like pirates, think foreign threats, terrorism, or economic chaos, show up, the IEEPA lets the captain take charge fast and do stuff they usually couldn't do without asking Congress first. Huh. Wow. That's they get to do stuff and they don't have to. Remember all those people that were like, hey, we have been in all these conflicts and Congress has never declared war? This is a way that the president can do things without having to worry about Congress declaring war. And he can say, I'm legit. I did it all legal. So later, when libertarians want to say, well, he's a war criminal because he authorized this or that, when it becomes under this, the word war criminal may mean a whole lot less. Because you might say he's a war criminal based on the actions, but the law will say, no, he's not. He used power appropriately. Appropriately meaning like within the context of what was permitted. Let's continue on. So what powers does it give? Control money stuff. I like how it writes it literally for like if I was a kid. The president can freeze bank accounts or assets of people, groups, or even whole countries if they're seen as a threat. That's not going to create any problems whatsoever. For example, if a country is causing trouble, the US can say, nope, you can't use your money here anymore. Number two, stop trade. They can block the US. They can block the US from doing business with certain people or places. Think of it like putting up a no trading allowed sign for specific countries or companies. So we would be able to say, Venezuela, you deal with this gang, or you can't do business here. We're not going to do business with you. Handle emergencies. To use these powers, the president has to declare a national emergency. That's what he did. It's like sounding an alarm that says, hey, this is serious. Once that's done, they can keep using these powers as long as the emergency is still a thing. Does that sound any way familiar at all? COVID, right? That's exactly how things played out in COVID. So yeah, I'm going to pick on my libertarian peers a little bit more because a lot of them were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The government, they went way too far. They shouldn't have been doing it. Well, the government basically said we have a national emergency, and then they used the powers that were given to them in the national emergency to do all kinds of things. That is exactly what we're doing here. Just not with the virus, but with drugs, from a drug war. That's basically effectively what it that's what led these organizations to have the power that they have, is the drug war. The one that libertarians and many conservatives have said was failed. So what are we doing? Rinse, wash, repeat. We're doing the same things that we have been doing. We're just using different legislation to give us that power. Just a slightly different issue, right? Like we're talking about immigration now. It's the war on immigration. We went from the war on drugs to the war on terror to the war on immigration. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if at some point it came out, we're in the war on illegal immigration, right? They won't say immigration because like there's a distinction, right? At least that's being made. You know, I understand that some libertarians are like, no, there's no distinction. There is one in most people's minds. There is illegal immigration. There's legal immigration. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we said, yeah, there's a war on illegal immigration. That's where we are now. We're just traversing from war to war to war. Military industrial complex is having a heyday. All right. In real life, this has been used a lot, like against countries like Iran or Russia. Seems like it's worked really well there. When they do stuff the US doesn't like, or to fight terrorists by cutting off their money. It's a big deal because it lets the president act quickly without waiting for Congress to agree, which can take forever. So now you know what the IEEPA is, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which is the basis for everything that Trump is doing and will do in regard to all of this stuff. Now you're more informed. Okay. So let's talk about some potential consequences here. All right. So as I said before, the government loves to invoke national security and interstate commerce for everything. So this feels to me very much like the international version of interstate commerce. Right. That's basic. And they're just going to basically do the same things that they could do, or maybe not quite the same, but similar things with regard to interstate commerce. But now they're going to do them internationally, and they're going to do it all legally, right? Because he's invoked this. He's invoked all of this stuff and said, hey, we got a national emergency. We got to deal with this. We're going to eradicate them basically from the entirety of the U.S. They're going to have to be eliminated completely. The president has broad powers. It's unclear how he's going to use them. We could potentially see drone strikes, as Elon Musk pointed out. We have just ramped up the war on drugs under the guise of the war on immigration, illegal immigration. That's what we've done. But here's the really big problem. As one of the people that I showed earlier pointed out, many of these organizations already operate in the U.S. So I want you to think about it. When we fought the war on terror, a lot of them actually, like, there weren't as many over here in the U.S., but they had to get over here to the U.S. Well, here they're already there. They're all over the place. And they're not just in Texas and California. They're in the Midwest too. So if we use drone strikes, how do you suppose they will retaliate? Because it's going to be a whole lot easier. They're literally right there. And we've often asked the question, like with regards to the conflict over in Gaza, we've often asked, like, well, how would you feel if somebody, if your neighbor bombed you and killed all your family members? How are Mexicans going to feel if we drone strike and we end up killing innocent people to fight cartels? What was that thing they called it? Terrorist math? Is that what it was? I think it was terrorist math, which is basically a calculation on how more terrorists are grown. Like they don't just hear some crazy message and go, wow, that really speaks to me. A lot of it is like, hey, see what they're doing to us? Join us and fight back. That's how it works. The drug war is about to become more dangerous, in my opinion, which means police will increase their weaponry and their actions to fight the war on drugs, because we haven't ended it yet. And there are still people talking about it. And police still want all their cool equipment. So if this escalates in the way that it can, we could see police not looking much different. I mean, they already aren't, but much different than our military. And it could get worse. Now you might say, DL, you're just overreacting. You're being absurd. So I want to point out one more thing. Let me see if I can pull it up. I pulled it up on my phone. I think I can show it here. Yes, perfect. I'm going to leave you with this because I think so I was just curious, and I was like, what's the financial difference between terrorists and cartels? So here's what Grok had to say. Let's see. Oh, let me go back. Scroll back up. Here we go. Drug cartels, the cash machine. Drug cartels, think Sinaloa, Sinaloa, CJNG, or Colombia's Clan de Golfo, are profit-chasing behemoths. Their bread and butter is the global drug trade. Okay, so this is still a drug war. Cocaine, meth, heroin, and especially fentanyl these days. They also dabble in human trafficking, extortion, and even legit fronts like agriculture or mining. Revenue estimates. The illicit drug market rakes in $426 billion to $652 billion yearly per UNODC figures that hold up into 2025. Mexican cartels, a dominant force, pull in $19 billion to $39 billion annually, according to DEA and RAND analysis. Fentanyl's rise, cheap to make, insanely profitable, has juiced those numbers since older estimates like RAND's 2019 $6.6 billion figure. A single kilo of fentanyl can net millions on U.S. streets, where demand drives $150 billion in yearly drug spending. Beyond drugs, add human smuggling, $13 billion globally, with cartels grabbing a chunk. Extortion rackets and, quote, taxes on legal industries, Mexico's avocado trade, and the biggest cartels might hit $50 billion or more combined annually. And let's see here. Cash flow. It's steady. Cartels are businesses feeding addiction. They reinvest in logistics, but margins are fat, especially with synthetic drugs. So let's see. International terrorist organizations. ISIS. At its 2014 to 2016 peak, ISIS hauled in $1 billion to $3 billion yearly. Oil sales, taxes on captured turf, bank looting. By 2025, with no caliphate, it's down to maybe 50 million to 200 million. Wow, wait a minute. They went down and now we're magically shifting gears? Interesting. Scraping by on extortion and remnants of its network. Hezbollah. Iran's support gives its heft 700 million to 1 billion annually. Roughly 200 million to 500 million is direct from Tehran. The rest comes from drugs, Latin American ties, money laundering, and diaspora cash. It's an outlier thanks to state sponsorship. Al-Qaeda, 50 million to 300 million. Total picture across dozens of groups. Collective funding might hit 2 billion to 5 billion annually. Wait a minute, let's go back real quick. What was that? $426 billion to 652 billion globally. Mexican cartels, 19 to 39 billion compared to what was where did it go? 2 to 5 billion dollars. Interesting. Bottom line, drug cartels control way more money, tens of billions annually for the heavyweights versus a few billion total for terrorists. Cartels ride a global market. Terrorists scrape by on scraps and handouts. The gap's stark, even accounting for shared tricks like trafficking. Cartels are the financial titans here, no contest. Now, let me ask you something. If you're operating in tens of billions of dollars and somebody tries to disrupt that, and you are already violent, known to be extremely vicious, what does that mean? That means more of the same, maybe even worse. We could potentially be getting ourselves into a situation where we're literally having a fight with organizations that have billions and billions of dollars and are way more vicious than we would ever be. I don't know that we're prepared for that. And I think this is a very bad idea. And I think that everybody that voted and said, we got to do something about immigration, you will own the tragedies and the horrors that may come. And hopefully I'm wrong. I would love it. I don't have to be right. In this case, I don't want to be right. But it doesn't look very good. All right, let's check out some comments and then we'll head on out of here. Let's see. Joe New says, there is no such thing as illegal immigration. Be that as it may, the government, who right now is controlling things at the behest of many Americans, says so. And because they say so, doesn't necessarily make it true, but it might make true all the things that are coming from that. And we will have to deal with them. It's kind of like if I say, well, I got fired from my job, but it wasn't my fault. Maybe it wasn't. Too bad. I'm the one that has to deal with it. Right? Like, oh, I couldn't pay my bills today because this thing befell me and I had to deal with it and I have no more money. Okay, maybe it's not my fault, but again, I have to deal with it. Immigration may not, we could argue the semantics of whether immigration is legal, is there a such thing as illegal immigration? But at the end of the day, we're dealing with the effect of an entity that believes it is and is operating on that. So I think we're going to have to do a little bit better than just saying, well, that's, that there's no such thing. Okay, maybe not. But when that war on terror, the war on illegal immigration, the war on drugs, which seems like they're all combining into one now, once that ramps up, if it does, the fact that there's no such thing as illegal immigration won't matter. Let's see. What else? Let's go through here. Yeah, I think that's all the comments that I've got today. So let's see here. Oh, this is a good point. One last comment here. Sadly, I don't think some of those Trump-supporting libertarians are anti-Trump immigration policy. I think a lot of them currently may not be, but I think if this goes in a very bad direction, they may suddenly be too little too late. And that's really how it goes. All right, folks, thank you so much. That's my show today. Hope you learned a lot. I learned a lot during the research on this. And go out and make your best arguments for people, to avoid all this stuff. But see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. You can also become part of the community by heading over to libertydad.locals.com. Remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.